We're back to single malt Scotch whiskey on this episode of Killing Whisky History. In fact, I have two cask strength single malt Scotch whiskies. Both were distilled in 1978. Both were aged for 14 years. Both were bottled by James MacArthur and Company, an independent bottler. One is from Blair Athol Distillery, and the other is from Nevis Distillery. These are both Highland whiskies, one from the Central Highlands and one from the West Highlands. So let's get started. Blair Athol Distillery was constructed in 1798, but at the time it was called Aldauer Distillery. In 1825, the distillery was expanded and renamed Blair Athol Distillery. From 1860 to 1882, this 22-year period, the distillery was run by Elizabeth Conacher. And in 1882, she turned around and sold the distillery to Mackenzie Company Distillers Limited. In 1898, the Bell's blends first hit the shelves, and the whiskey at the core of Bell's was Blair Athol malt whiskey. So what happened was, in 1933, Arthur Bell & Sons just went ahead and bought the Blair Athol Distillery so they could have as much malt as they needed for their very popular blends. The distillery itself was actually closed during World War II, or more specifically from 1932 to 1949. In 1985, Guinness bought Arthur Bell & Sons. And today, that company is known as Diageo, and Diageo still owns Blair Athol Distillery. Nevis Distillery was built in 1825 by Long John MacDonald, and it stayed in the MacDonald family until 1941, when they sold it to Joseph Hobbs of Canada. Joseph Hobbs experimented there, adding new stills, adding different kinds of washbacks, and the distillery was closed from 1978 to 1984. During that time, Hobbs sold the distillery back to Long John MacDonald's company. The distillery closed again from 1986 to 1990, and at the end of that time period, Long John Distillers went ahead and sold the distillery to Nikka of Japan. Today, it's still owned by Nikka, and 75% of what is produced at the Nevis Distillery gets shipped to Japan for Nikka's whiskies. Both the Blair Athol and the Nevis have both an age statement and a distillation year. Both are 14 years old, and both were distilled in 1978, which means these whiskeys were bottled in either 1992 or 1993. You'll see down below, one has a 53.1 ABV and the other one has a 55.8 ABV, and both are measured in centiliters, in this case 5 centiliters. These were both bottled by James MacArthur and Company Limited, and these are both likely released in Europe. Blair Athol. Nevis, distilled in 1978, right before the distillery was closed. Blair Athol. The first two notes that just jump right out are anise and citronella candles. It's not that hot on the nose, just a little bit of heat. Green apples, a little bit of oak, but it's not a vanilla bomb, there's no sawdust, there's no aggressive new oak. A little bit of maltiness is still in there after 14 years. A little bit of root beer barrel candy. Lime candy as opposed to lime juice. The nose on the Blair Athol is really mellowing with time. It does pick up some buttery notes, but it has a lot of nice white fruit, like pears and apples and Nevis. Hot street tar. Hops, creme de cassis. I'd say mint leaves and basil leaves. There's a little wood smoke, barley and lemon note. Dr. Brown's black cherry soda. Cilantro. The heat shows more in the palate. The oak isn't really showing up in the palate, which is nice because you get a lot of really fierce spirit here. Cantaloupe, honeydew, pineapple, and just this really sweet citrusy thing going on throughout. The sweetness does get balanced out by some of the pepperiness and almost this tart fruit note underneath. It never gets too sweet. Now on the palate after 20 minutes, lime and a really nice barley note and just a flicker of vanilla. It's just very good bourbon cask whiskey. The mud in your eye. Oh my goodness. That was even better than I expected. There is undoubtedly a significant level of peat in there. A little bit of apple and a little bit of peach kind of lingering in there as well. Fresh herbs and dry herbs. Herbs that have been heated up. Basil, oregano, tarragon, thyme. It sparkles. Still there's this dense, earthy, chocolatey undertone. Old school warehouses, just stone, mold, and just sweating barrels is what this is now giving off. You're getting some really nice sherry cask action in the finish. You are getting some dried fruits. You are even getting a little bit of toffee. The whiskey really dances between difficult notes, easy notes, dark notes, light notes, and it's able to drive those multitudes right on through. I'm gonna say this is phenomenal stuff. I can't say enough about this Ben Nevis.
Papa.
Sounds like my time is up.